Welcome to the show. It's Thursday. What a day outside. Hope you're having a great one as we start the show today, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. It's Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Today is going to be a sprint to the finish because we're only going to be here for an hour. NFL preseason games kicking off tonight. Of course, we had the Hall of Fame game last week, but there's 3 games tonight, including the Indianapolis Colts and the Baltimore Ravens, which will be heard right here on Sports Radio 960 AM in South Bend, 106.1 FM up north in southwestern Michigan. You can tune in to 94.3 FM for South Bend Cubs South Bend Cubs baseball later. How are you, Jess?
I'm doing great, actually. Less busy week of work. It's finally Thursday. Coming to see you folks tomorrow. And now that the show ends at 6, that means I can go get wings and watch preseason football with all my friends.
That's right, baby. You can just be breathless later on. Tommy Guns in the YouTube chat, and you can watch the show, of course, at the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel, the Irish Breakdown channel. He says, man, first no more we in, we out. Now no more midweek mailbag. That call-in ability better be coming soon. Easy, Tommy. Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. We're in the middle of Notre Dame training camp. We've got all these different coaches, assistant coaches, and players that we're talking to. So we want you and all the other listeners to be able to hear all of their insights. The mailbag will be back next week. We'll have a we in, we out show next week, if that's what everyone wants. But we've had all these coaches, and we've got some Al Washington comments tonight about the Fighting Irish defensive line. So that's the priority. Things are going to start to slow down next week in terms of media availabilities and all that different kind of stuff. But for right now, 1 week, not necessarily 1 week only, but we're preempting the mailbag and the we in, we out shows for in-depth Notre Dame content with 24 days to go until the season opener between Notre Dame and Miami. And this, of course, is the station in South Bend for Notre Dame football. Let me ask you this, Jess, before we hear from Al Washington. How do you feel about Al Washington, Notre Dame defensive line coach, right now compared to maybe a couple of years ago?
Feel better about him. I think that comes obviously with team success. But I think that the number one thing that I've been noticing is there's an influx of younger recruits having an impact early on. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Boubacar Traore, Young, those are guys who are already, making an impact on the field. So obviously, credit kind of has to go to Al Washington for recruiting at a high level. I think the performance in the recruiting and the performance on the field has been great. And maybe not so much they don't have like a stud guy, yet, but they're really deep, and I consider depth more important than having maybe one stud.
I think some studs are coming this year.
And that's what I think. I think we kind of have to be a little bit patient with some of these studs that are coming.
And look, and patience is the word, and I kind of said that early on. Everyone, I think, gets impatient. We had a coaching change. Marcus Freeman takes over for Brian Kelly. Freeman brings in his guys for the most part to fill out the staff. There were some, that were kind of handed to him or, that he inherited or however you want to say it. But Al Washington was a guy Freeman brought in from the outside. And you did have a really successful guy like Mike Elston who was, in place and left. And when you inherit guys on the roster, I think that there is bound to be, not everyone's going to just fall in line with what you're saying, what you're preaching. There's going to be a different way of doing things. And that's kind of what I said. When you have those coaching change, sometimes one coach sees things one way and kind of has a vision for guys who he's coaching in one way. And then another guy comes in the next year and the vision might not always be the same. And they might not receive a different message in the right way. And I think as each year has gone on, we've seen Al Washington, the developer of talent on the defensive line, and we have also seen a growth in his recruiting. And I think that that's been the biggest thing that people were looking for from Al Washington, honestly, was the uptick in recruiting, and they're starting to hit that now with this current cycle. That's looking really good, and I think that has kind of swayed some people's opinions on Al Washington. Okay, so with that in mind, let's hear some of his comments because, again, we don't have a lot of time tonight, so we can't waste much more time. We're on the clock from start to finish. The defensive line room is deep. They've got 22 guys in the room. Now, that does include some walk-on guys. So what is the benefit of that many bodies in that defensive line room?
Yeah, I think the unique thing is a lot of guys that are in the room played. Obviously, we got some young guys, 5 freshmen, and a couple redshirt guys that haven't yet. But yeah, I just think the way our philosophy on defense, man, is to kind of go in waves. I think the season's longer. We experienced that this year, and so you have to develop from the youngest or the lowest point to all the way up. So I just think that's how that's a benefit, and my job is obviously to prepare as many guys as I can. There's only going to be 4 to 5 on any given down. That is what it is. But I think the culture of the room has got to be one where you appreciate the fact that any moment, man, I'm going to be ready when my number's called. And the objective is to play the best ball we can. So that's the message we preach. That's the message our guys preach. I think a lot of the guys who were around last year saw the benefit of that because we had some tough injuries and some things happen. So that's kind of the mindset we have, and I think that's an advantage at the end of the day.
Good insights there from Al Washington, and you'll hear some more good insights, I think, from Al Washington in these clips. A lot of defensive linemen. Again, it's like theoretically, 22 guys is essentially 5+ different defensive line units. Let me just read through like end versus defensive tackle here real quick. The ends: Boubacar Traore, Logan Thomas, Josh Burnham, Junior Tui Alamaka, Preston Zinter is in that group now. Chris Burgess, a freshman, Bryce Young, Cole Mullins. Yeah, I got Bryce Young in there. I wanted to make sure I didn't leave anybody out. The tackles: Gabe Rubio, Jason Onye, Jared Dawson, Donovan Heinisch, Elijah Hughes, Armel Mukum, Davian Dixon, Sean Sevillano Jr., Brennan Vernon is in that group as well. What do you think of all these numbers and kind of how you use that to your advantage, Jess?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick because there's a lot to get into today, but it's definitely not a disadvantage. And I think the biggest thing that Al Washington talked about is, they're going to come in waves. You want to keep guys fresh. There's no reason to run down guys when you have, this kind of depth. And it'll prove to be vital as the season goes on when maybe some guys get dinged up here or there. And, we saw it last season. The next guy has to be ready, and there really can't be, too much of a drop-off between line 1, line 2, and line 3. And I've said it before, it's always kind of like that hockey style. You're getting different line shifts in. But I think the most important part for this is, that when you have these sort of numbers, you're not stuck in you have to play this sort of defensive front every game. You can almost game plan or kind of come up schematically. Well, hey, here's what we want to try to do against this team and run and pass.
Right.
And that's going to vary week to week, and you have enough bodies to kind of piece in. This guy might be better against USC, but this guy might be better against Syracuse. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself into just forcing guys to kind of fit the puzzle.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And, with as many bodies as they have and as many body types, and they're doing things a little bit differently now with the ends, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. But I think that does give you, with that many guys, the ability to mix and match, some things. So you touched on something that he's going to kind of get to here. What will the actual numbers for the game day defensive line rotation look like once they get to that point?
You got to have it set so a lot of the ends will have dual responsibilities, special teams. So usually you want 5 to 6, D ends, and then you want, depending on what team you're playing, if you're playing like a 12 personnel team, you may want 6 DTs, 5 to 6 DTs. So that's typically when you're traveling with. And that is on the higher side. But at least, as the game goes, you can have some guys rolling, which is what we want to try to do.
And so he kind of talked about what you were talking about there, Jesse. If it's a 12 personnel heavy team, you're going to have more defensive tackles, bigger bodies inside. If it's, like run and shoot and, like your 10 personnel or whatever it happens to be, You're obviously going to want more defensive backs, and and you're going to have probably fewer defensive tackles, and you want more quick twitch type guys. What did you think of that explanation there?
No, I completely agree. And when he said you got 5 or 6 guys at each position, I mean, that makes sense. You're basically running 3 deep at each edge position and then 3 deep at each interior line position. And that's pretty standard across the board. So I think that I don't think the number of guys will change. It's just a matter of who they are, like who it specifically is might change game to game. Again, just kind of dependent on, specific matchups, or, if they get into maybe more 12 personnel, 10 personnel, 11 personnel, like you were talking about. But nothing kind of sounded out of the ordinary, I guess, for what he was saying.
Joe Allen asking in the YouTube chat, have we seen much of Onye? I mean, he's out there. Unfortunately, other than day one, when we did get to see some live stuff, not in pads, but live, we saw Onye out there. He looked fine. Pretty much everything else that we've seen from the offensive line and the defensive line has just been position drill type stuff. He's moving well. He looks good, but shouldn't you be able to, and I don't mean this as a pejorative, like, shouldn't you be able to look good, running around and hitting a pad, basically, if you're a power 4 defensive lineman. So that's kind of the extent of what we've been able to see, unfortunately, so far, just because we haven't seen anything that resembles live since day one. Now, one of the remarkable things about this defensive line room is not just the numbers in the room, but the bodies as well. Like, the composition of these guys does look a lot different. Here's Washington on the transformation of that line over these last 3+ years.
Credit Landau and Alexa Appleman, and I think those two, Alexa's our team nutritionist, and Coach Landau, director of sports performance, and his staff, and Alexa's staff. I think they do a great job. Talk about reaching your genetic potential. Hell, they get them longer than we do. You think about the whole year, the off season, man, they're developing. So I think that's a big part of it. You give them a goal. Kids got a goal. They formulate a plan, and the kids part of it is their discipline. They follow the plan, and I think that's what you get. I think those two things combined, man, help dramatically. So, and that has helped the way our guys look. And I feel like that's really helped us, man.
There he's talking about Lauren Landau, of course, and Alexa Appleman, as he said, who's the team nutritionist. But like, listen to the sizes of these defensive tackles. Rubio, 6'5", 321. Onye, 6'5", 302, over 3 bills now after he came back last year. Jared Dawson, 288 pounds. Donovan Heinisch, 277. Elijah Hughes, 300. Armel Mukam, 305. Davion Dixon, 324. Sevillano, 340 pounds. Brennan Vernon is up to 305 pounds now. And Vernon is a guy who people keep asking about. Obviously, came to Notre Dame, borderline 5-star guy, another guy we've seen at drills, but haven't seen, a whole lot otherwise. But to me, Jess, just like one, Landau with what got Landau here, and, like the segue of Bayless leaving, what's that been? I guess that's been 2 years ago now at this point, right? Yeah, because that was before 2 seasons ago, right before training camp started. It was the difference between like the Bayless was like the old school strength coach. It was mostly you're training for strength, like bulk and that whole thing, which obviously a lot of people were doing for a long time. The difference with Landau now is there's still obviously a lot of strength training in there, but you're also talking about explosiveness, dynamic,
functional movement.
Yeah, functional movement, ability to change directions and all those kind of things. And you can see the difference in the body types now of like specifically of these defensive linemen. And they're also recruiting in that direction as well.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that Al Washington talks about is discipline. You have to be disciplined in both aspects, into your commitment to working hard in the weight room, but then you also have to be disciplined on what you're, putting in your body outside of practice, outside of the training room. And, as someone who is kind of working out every day and watching what they eat, it's not the most fun thing to do, but again, if you're disciplined and you have a goal and you're motivated, that's what it's going to be. So to me, I think that's really impressive and shows everyone's kind of overall commitment, obviously to themselves, but to the betterment of the team, right? They want to be the best version of themselves for the team. But I liked what you talked about with Landau. I think that he's more of a, like, when you think of him, I think the person you should immediately think of is Christian McCaffrey, someone who's obviously very shredded, very strong, very ripped, but then also has all of the abilities to make all the cuts and bursts and speed that he wants to. So that's how these Notre Dame players have been training. And like you said, I just think that you can see it on the field in terms of just overall individual speed, but also team speed and athleticism. Notre Dame is so much more faster and able to play in space, compared to what they were a few years ago. And that's a combination of two things. One, different recruits, but then also once the recruits are here, training them properly to do what you need them to do.
Right. Both from the actual training aspect and, like Al Washington was talking about, from the nutritional aspect as well. Maybe the biggest change that new defensive coordinator Chris Ash has made to the defense is going to be the left end, right end setup, as opposed to the Viper plays the boundary side, the big end plays the field side. And Washington discussed the adjustment to that new system, left end, right end now.
I think you have to know more. You can't just know one specific thing. You got to understand the concepts. You got to understand, hey, I'm to the boundary here. What issues? What issues can come, and then what things that the defense need, vice versa the field. So I just think you have to have, more of an understanding of the big picture than you would if you were just one exclusive thing. And I think the positive is it's going to help down the road. We can put the best two on the field at the time, situationally. So, yeah, there's some differences there, but they're smart, and we've been working at it.
Al Washington, guy who was up for a head coaching job a couple of years ago. Can we just compliment him on the level of detail and insight?
Yeah, way better than that Chris Ash interview.
That's right.
So everyone that was complaining on, what was that, Monday? This is what a good intel looks like. You're obviously getting answers, but they're not giving away trade secrets.
So what do you think? DJ's asking, this is what I was going to put to you. So what do you think about it? How much difference do you think this is going to make, going left end, right end, as opposed to, again, where the Viper is always in the boundary?
I think first and foremost, it's just going to lead to better ball, like Al Washington was talking about. And I think it goes back to a lot of what Marcus Freeman says in the difference between football and football. These ends can play football. It's not just this is my fit and that's it. Like, you have to have a better understanding of the concept and the why when you're on both sides of the field, because that you have different responsibilities on each side of the field. So I think it's going to do nothing but make these guys better overall players and give them the ability to honestly just be playmakers out there, right? Because when you understand, it's kind of like anything. When you understand why you're doing it and you're not just kind of doing muscle memory or memorization, when something out of the ordinary happens in a big time game where, again, you maybe didn't see it on film, or maybe it's something you didn't game plan for, your football intuition will just take over and you'll make a play. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I think the other important aspect of it is you don't get pigeonholed into, well, we need to put this guy on this side and this guy on this side, when it might not be your best two players on the field. So if these guys have knowledge of both positions, you can play your best duo out there at all times. So I think that's only going to lead to better results.
Yeah, I think it gives them the ability to get that many more talented guys on the field at the same time, especially.
And I'll be honest with you too, like, it really shouldn't make a difference. Like, these guys should be able to play both sides.
Well, and that's the thing. Again, like, going to the recruiting, when you look at the body types of these guys now, it's different. Like, it's not, they've got fewer of the Javonte Jean-Baptiste, RJ Oben type bodies, big, thick, like even going back to like a Stephon Tuitt or something like that. You've just got a lot more, regardless of which side they're going to play, they're just longer and more athletic body types that they're going to have out there. So you just, the only difference is now you've got to be aware, okay, now we're over here, on the field, and now we're in the boundary, like you're going to be on the same side potentially, but it's just a matter of, okay, where's where's the ball, which hash mark is the ball on, and that kind of stuff.
I mean, to be honest with you, to me, it'll mainly be where is your support and your help if you're on the field side versus the boundary. Who are you funneling it to? Who is the play? You know, are you spilling the ball inside? Are you spilling the ball outside? Are you trying to use the out of bounds as kind of your extra help? Are you trying to use the inside game to your linebackers or, you know, maybe a safety coming down? But largely a lot of it's the same. It's just depending on, you know, where you're trying to spill the play to.
All right, one final thought from Al Washington, this one on Jordan Botelho, who, of course, tore that pectoral muscle nearly 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think we got to be smart. Like, to me, it's like you got the luxury to be smart. Nobody should be like, hey, you're back in, you know, you're getting 50, 60 reps. Like, because I'm really, we got to win this year. We got to do the best we can. Our goal is to be the best version of us. But, you know, I think we have the luxury to also make sure that we're smart with people. You're not just putting people in bad spots because, you know, Jordan's a guy who's his 6th year, I think it is, and, you know, he's got a lot of football ahead of him, you hope. So you want to be smart with him for his career, too, like, you know what I mean? And I think we have a chance to do that because we do have a lot of guys that have played in that, a lot of depth. So, yeah, we'll be smart with him. We'll be smart with all our guys. And, you know, but I'm excited to get him back, man. You know, I think he's worked his tail off to get back to where he is now. And when the time comes, man, we can see 12 going out there smashing people.
I mean, we've already seen him practicing pretty hard when we've been out there in camp. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a tricky situation, Botelho, because, you know, like he talked about, he has a ton of experience, so you want to be able to utilize it, but also you have to be patient at the same time and not rush him back and immediately give him a workload, you know, so heavy that it could jeopardize his health because, you know, Notre Dame, like he said, there's 22 guys in the room, right? So if you got 22 guys, you can't hyperfixate on getting one Jordan Botelho back into the mix. You got to ease him back into it. But you have the comfort of a lot of other guys in the room to kind of, you know, split that workload up and still be effective at the same time. And also keeping consideration of, you know, his potential career after Notre Dame. And that's probably the most important part. And you can't just put him out there to put him out there. Like he said, like they're in the business of winning games. So if Botelho gives them the best chance of winning a game, then obviously his role will be increased. But until then, you kind of have to find a way to transition him back into the full swing of things.
Along with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. We've only got 30 minutes left. In other words, we wrap up in about 30 minutes. So we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to take this break. We're going to come back. This will be our only break of the first hour. We've got rapid fire coming up next when we continue. Don't forget South Bend Cubs tonight on 94.3 FM here in South Bend. We are rocking and rolling. It is rapid fire time on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat. We've got maybe 20 minutes here to go, a little bit less than 20 minutes. We will do what we can. Before I get to the first question, TD4ND in the YouTube chat, Jesse, has a question for you. When will we see the first whiteboard of the season? Are you officially committing to whiteboard this season?
Yep, you'll catch first whiteboard week 1. Start talking about, Miami.
Week 1 leading up to the game.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Looking forward to it.
That game is on, obviously, Saturday. So
it's on Sunday.
Oh, really? Sunday?
Yes.
So it'll be Sunday. So it still doesn't change. My first week of the show, or first show of that game week, will be Monday. So I would maybe expect something that Monday.
Yes. Double fill in the blanks on this first question. Notre Dame's biggest savages on each side of the ball this season will be blank and blank.
Will be Jeremiah Love and Adon Schuler.
Expand. I mean, we're not that short of time.
I think Jeremiah Love is pretty self-explanatory. I think he's the most explosive, physical, just threat on the offense. I think he'll be the best overall offensive player, and really just provide that security to CJ Carr, Kenny Menchie, for a young quarterback. So definitely Jeremiah Love on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, I have to go with Adon Schuler. I think he's great in coverage. I think he's has the willingness to come downhill and fill the gap as a runner. In the run game. To me, there's nothing more savage than a defensive back who can pick you off, but can also come downhill and really tackle you in open space. So to me, that's a savage, someone who can take the ball away, but also limit you in the run game downhill.
I like that. I was ready for you to list off like 45 different guys on the roster, considering your history. Jeremiah Love is kind of a lock. I tell you who I think is going to be another one, regardless of the size of his role, maybe because he's going to have potentially limited opportunities. I'm going to go with Aeneas Williams. Like any of the 3 running backs, Love, Price, Williams, I think those guys are going to be total savages. Like DJ is saying Billy Schrouth on the offensive line. I don't think you could go wrong with that one either. But I think we're like, if we were doing Good Morning Football and we were doing college edition of Angry Runs, I think we're going to see some angry runs from Notre Dame's 3 running backs this season. And Aeneas might be like the one at the top of the list because, again, he's going to have a lot more to prove this year with the opportunities that he gets. I like Adon Schuler. He was on my list as well. Drake Bowen was on my list. I'm going with KVA, though, Kingston Viliamo Asa. I think that he is going to be a Tasmanian devil for Notre Dame when he's on the field playing linebacker.
I think he plays the most savage. Drake Bowen plays, again, don't take this the wrong way, but in comparison, a more conservative game. He's going to wrap you up. He's going to take you down. Yeah. KVA has that ability to just give you those show-stopping, like, wow hits. Like he can really come after you. And they're going to let him more loose on the edge to kind of rush the passer as well.
Yep. Fred's got another good one. Talich is a savage as well. Yep, I would agree with that. Yep. Snead plays pretty savage when he has his opportunities as well. I think we're going to see a lot of those kind of dudes, but those are my top of the list guys, the ones that I said. Fill in the blank. It's blank, speaking of Billy Schrouth, that Schrouth says Notre Dame will have the best offensive line in the nation with its sights set on winning the Joe Moore Award this year.
I think it's awesome that he says that because it's setting the expectation high. And I don't know if you saw this today, but McElroy did his preseason polls, and he had Notre Dame at number 3. And the reason why he loves Notre Dame so much is because of their physicality. He said it's led by their offensive line. So you want an offensive line that thinks highly of themselves, that takes that challenge upon themselves of, we're going to establish the line of scrimmage, we're going to punch you in the mouth, and we're going to be the most physical team out there. I think they have the pieces to do it. It's just a matter of how it all comes together. But they're just loaded with so much kind of young talent along that offensive line. And I honestly thought Billy Schrouth could have been one of the savages on offense because I think He
For
plays
sure.
a lot like Rocco Spindler, like we were talking about, someone who is really taking on that role of being aggressive and delivering the punch. So I love it. And I wouldn't want a group that's not striving for something like that. That doesn't want to be the best, that doesn't have their sights on something like the Joe Moore Award.
That's absolutely right. I think it's great that, like the Joe Moore Award obviously goes to the top offensive line. This is not an individual award. This is a unit focused award, which I think is pretty cool. Like it's really, in terms of all the awards, that's really, that's the only one that goes to a group. Everything else is an individual award, and they are locked in on being a number one, numero uno, the best offensive line unit in the nation. And I think that some of the things that we've seen so far in practice would say that they are on their way to that. And I think that there are a lot of expectations of that. Marcus Freeman has said from day one, offensive, defensive line driven team. And we talked about defensive line in the first segment, and both of those units are going to work. Who did McElroy have number 1 and 2? I'm curious.
I didn't get that far.
So how do you not get that far? What was it, a video or something? And he was just like,
there's a video, and it was only the snip about Notre Dame.
Okay. All right. I'll have to see if I can find that. Fill in the blank. Marcus Freeman wearing this year's edition of the shirt at practice Wednesday is blank.
Is great for how do I say this? Like campus camaraderie, right? Like Marcus Freeman's out there wearing the same shirt as everyone else, yet John Gruden opens up a box today of swag never seen before. And that's usually what you see with Marcus Freeman, is you see stuff that he's wearing all the time that's out of the ordinary, that no one else can find. But finally, for once, he's wearing the most common shirt that literally everyone on campus can get. So I don't know if it was strategic, but when the head football coach wears the shirt that everyone can find in the bookstore, I think that's just great for kind of overall, the message of Notre Dame football.
Yeah, I mean, it is the shirt. And I'll say this, no matter what T-shirt he's wearing, I feel like the guns are a little bit bigger for Marcus Freeman this year. I was walking up to the Irish Athletic Center for practice last weekend. I think it was on Saturday, and he was coming from the Goog, and he was, walking down the sidewalk into the building, and he's always obviously been in pretty good shape, but I feel like he's worked a little bit harder this offseason. So he's filled it out, and to wear the shirt is like, you're just putting it over the top. It's great advertising. And I think that, you're like, he's getting ready for that Irish wear green game even earlier than everybody else wearing it to practice. It's the first time I think I've seen him wear the shirt at a practice in his time so far. Doesn't mean he never has, because it's not like we're out there for every practice. ESPN's Adam Rittenberg says Kalen DeBoer will be on the hot seat if Alabama misses the college football playoff again this season. Do you buy or sell that?
I'm selling that. I get it. It's Alabama. I think it has to be. I think the question has to be more or less, is it like a 9-3 and you miss, or is it a 7-5 and you miss? I think there's a big difference between that. But I mean, if they're teetering on, one of the first teams out, maybe one loss is what's holding them back. I get it. It's Alabama, and the precedent has been set by Nick Saban, but Nick Saban left for a reason, because it's a new landscape in college football. So I don't think that you can demand a coach in his first 2 years at Alabama to be in the playoff, or that's it at the end of the day, with how much college football has changed since the previous regime was there.
So you're telling me that fan bases think rationally. That's what you're telling me.
I hope so.
I don't know if it'll be a legit hot seat, because to be in a true hot seat, that obviously has to come from the top. The athletic director down there did hire Kalen DeBoer. They got used to winning for a long time under Nick Saban, and obviously winning at an elite level under Nick Saban. And I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it, and I will say it again. Look at what happened prior to Nick Saban being there. There's look at how many coaches they went through before they got to Nick Saban, and he took them to that level. Now, Alabama is obviously a historically great program. Bear Bryant, Gene Stallings, obviously both won national championships before Nick Saban. But after Gene Stallings and until Nick Saban, there were a lot of lean years for Alabama football. And so I still don't think that, you just insert coach because he had success someplace else and they're going to play at that same standard. So I don't know if it'll be true hot seat if they miss the playoff, but to lose to Vanderbilt again and miss the playoff, I think that that turns those cookers up pretty quickly, don't you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I want to play this next cut. We were going to do it yesterday, and Vince and I didn't have time. Maybe you've seen this. I thought it was pretty funny. Longtime Cleveland Browns reporter Mary Kay Cabot was inducted into the writers' wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame over the weekend. Cabot has been on that beat since 1988 and covered Bill Belichick when he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns back in the 90s. She had a little fun with Belichick during her induction speech.
Bill Belichick was the first Browns coach I ever covered. You see, if you start out with Bill Belichick, no one can rattle you after that. If Bill didn't like something I wrote, he'd call and yell at me. If you asked a dumb question, he'd call you out. Eventually, I had to learn to stand up to him. During one of those yelling matches, I told him, if you don't have the footballs to say that to the guys, then don't say it to me. Bam. But now, I totally understand why Bill gave me such a hard time. I was 28 at the time, and he just couldn't relate to a woman that old.
Mary Kay Cabot with a walk-off there, going into the writers' wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What did you think when you heard that?
I love that. And I think anytime you can send shots at Bill Belichick, it's always warranted, right? But it kind of shows, kind of how prolific her career is at the same time, because everyone, remembers Belichick obviously early on with the Browns and it not being the most super successful situation. But there's no better person, I think, than getting broken in by Bill Belichick. If you can deal with Bill Belichick, I think you can deal with just about anyone. So it was kind of her impromptu training that she didn't even know. Yeah.
And I like that, obviously she was giving it back to Bill Belichick before he was Bill Belichick.
Right.
Like if you're talking Patriots Belichick, then it's probably a little bit different. But it's like, who are you? I've been here. I'm just doing my thing. She has actually been on this show before. We had her on back after DeShone Kizer was drafted by the Cleveland Browns and, talked about him and, opportunities for him. Obviously things didn't work out, but she was great. And a great, literally you're going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and you get to zing one of the greatest coaches of all time. Like, how great is that? Just in a nutshell, can't get much better. I didn't realize, when we had her on, what a trailblazer she was, because there weren't a whole lot of women reporters, doing that job on the beat day to day for newspapers back in the 1980s. So that is awesome for Mary Kay Cabot. I don't know if you I guess now I know you probably don't get the what is it, the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I'm sure you don't get it delivered to you. Do you read any Browns stuff there in town?
Yeah, there's still stuff that pops up on my social media. And she's one of the first. She's kind of like the Browns beat reporter. Like if something big happens, she's usually the first one to post about it on social media. So I definitely recognize the name and face.
Yep, for sure. I actually got SeatGeek notification trying to hit me up for Cleveland Browns tickets because we went to the Browns Cowboys season opener last year. So yeah, so they think that a Browns fan still. We do have NFL preseason games going on tonight. 3 preseason games, including Colts-Ravens, which will be right here on Sports Radio WSBT. How into preseason games are you? Where does it hit on your scale?
So I'm not super into it. I'll watch the Cowboys games, obviously, just to kind of see, what's going on. Maybe some guys that are going to make the back end of the roster and hopefully kind of be on the field. But, most importantly, like tonight, it's a good way to get out with some friends, eat some wings, watch a little football. And to be honest with you, and this probably shouldn't surprise many people, but the main reason I like having it back is you can start betting again on the NFL.
Well, and in terms of the Colts game tonight, probably a good chance we're going to see Riley Leonard.
Yeah, I've heard he's already established himself as a third-string quarterback, and when you got Daniel Jones, who sucks in front of you, and Anthony Richardson, who hasn't really proven himself, these are important games for Riley Leonard. He could find himself, maybe into a backup or even a starting role. Who knows? I think in Indianapolis, nothing is off the table at the quarterback position right now.
I think that, as Justin is asking in the YouTube chat, is Riley expected to get a few snaps? I think he's going to get most of the second half the way it sounds. I think that it sounds like Richardson's going to start. Jones is going to come in after him. It sounds like those two guys will get like each around a quarter in the first half. I think Riley Leonard, I don't know what they've got in terms of a number 4 guy out there. He'll probably get to play at least a quarter tonight, if not more, in the second half. So, again, it's here on Sports Radio WSBT, and it'll also be televised on NFL Network. We are winding down. The show's going to end here in just a minute or so. Tommy wants to know if we can just kick it old school and stay on YouTube after cutting off from the radio. Unfortunately, Tommy, because I am in the studio where things are broadcast, they've got to get in here to operate that Colts game after I leave. So I can't just sit here and keep doing the show. That is some good food for thought for the next time we get potentially some kind of conflict like this. If we're going to be cut off at only an hour, maybe I just stay home and do the show there, and someone comes in and pushes buttons here so that we can continue on the YouTube. That is not a bad suggestion. One of the better suggestions Tommy has had. Craig says the whiteboard needs a sponsor. I mean, everything needs a sponsor.
Yeah.
Right?
More sponsor, more dollars.
That's right. All right. Well, that is going to do it for tonight. A short show. Once again, we got in some Al Washington comments. We got in some rapid fire, short and sweet. We got a little bit of everything. Jesse, drive safely, and I will see you soon here in South Bend.
Yes. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And happy anniversary to my wife, Stacy, as well as to Vince and Kristen D'Addario. 32 years for my wife and I tonight. I will see you soon. Indianapolis Colts football. Colts Ravens is coming up next on WSBT.